Hello, my name is Roy Poyan. I'm the Director of Families Impacted by Opioids. I want to thank you for joining us for this next episode of Fentanyl and Families in Harm's Way. You know, each time I mention that title to you, I pause because I'm so taken by how many American families, just because they are a family, are in harm's way. You are the target for the Sinaloa families in Mexico, where they are buying precursors and putting fentanyl into these massive quantities of product that are coming across the border. They're so deadly. And my thought is that if you have a family and things are not, going right, you're vulnerable. And for most families, things, it's hard to go right all the time, and for every person in your family. So I think that, this is truly a drug war, and it's actually, in my mind, it's almost a biochemical war. And for that reason, you are the target. They either want to get your children addicted to this drug, which is very profitable for them, have them use them to distribute the drug, and have them police it and do kind of thuggery work. And you might say, oh, that's somebody else's child, on all those fronts. And I'm here to tell you, not necessarily. So as we start to look at the community, what's important for us to realize is there's a lot of people out there that have been dealing with this for some time now. And we did community mapping earlier in an episode, and we did the 4 structures of a community in the very beginning of our episodes. It was episode number 5, you may recall. And now we're looking at, let's take the 32 issues, find out who's out there, which we did in community mapping, but we never got in touch with them, okay? Now let's get in touch with them. Let's get in touch with them in advance. Let's find out what paperwork they require. How much does it cost for insurance, for out of pocket? You can outline all of these on a form and then put them into a binder, and then have your almost your entire journey of things that could be known, identified, and then almost rehearsed. And you might say, well, why would I want to go through it twice? It's bad enough that I have to go through it once. I would agree. To answer that question, though, although self-imposed question, I believe that you're going to benefit because it's going to reduce your stress. When we start to think in our mind, what if this happens? What if that happens? Well, now you kind of know there's a possibility it would happen. It's actually one of the categories. And you've already started to do something about it. You're going to be in a much stronger place, and that's where we want you. You're being proactive, you're getting ready, and then because you're not right pressed up against the issue at the moment, you're going to be able to think more clearly about it. You'll have time to gather the resources, do maybe a little bit of shopping around. You'll have the luxury of time and energy and the follow-through and follow-up. A lot of times when you call these groups, you're talking about 3 or 4 voicemails and missed contacts and, did I get the number right? Did I talk to the right person in the organization? So it's not just, yeah, I see them, they're there, let's pick up the phone, done. We recorded everything. It's going to be more involved than that. So let's get started now. Let's get you networked in advance. And the best place to do that is at the family table, where we can spread things out. And for your sake, you can then take a look at what are we dealing with and who's here to help and how can they help us in advance. Thank you for joining us at the family table. We're looking at getting networked in advance on purpose because we've done a couple of pieces of work that really need to kind of come together. By this point, you've done a really great job in creating the community map for yourself, and you have an understanding of who's out there. And you know about the different parts of getting an assessment and a diagnosis and staging, and you know that the disease progresses and how it progresses and relapse. There's a lot of things that you know about here that makes going out and getting networked in advance much more plausible. I couldn't have asked that of you before you took all these other episodes, because you almost would have embarrassed yourself. You would have gone out and said, I know nothing about what's happening. I need your help, and I'm not quite sure what to expect from you. And that's not where we wanted you. And that's where most of America is. We don't really have a clear understanding of this industry because we really haven't gone out and met this industry. And that's what I'm asking you to do before you need it. So by now you have an understanding that there's medical, there's addiction services, medical services, support services, spiritual care, and also, of course, mental health. With all of these different players or agencies, programs, that as you go through this chronic disease on a timeline, which will be for the rest of your life as a part of it, then you'll want to have kind of made record so that you don't find yourself repeating. You might have forgotten who you talked to. You might have forgotten what they said. That's not fair to you. So we are asking that in this particular seminar, you take time to very more deliberately address the topic of going out and talking to people and finding out what is it that you do and how do you do it and how do I use you. So the first step is the pre-mapping, and the second step is the mapping, and the third step is setting up your map in a geographical way by category, and then take an analysis of what's being provided to you, and then going out and introducing yourself and your situation and your financials. And you might sit there and think, how do we know we're going to need it? And the answer is, because there's been a lot of people before you that have gone through this. So many times, we pretty much know you're going to need to go through detox, and you're going to need to go through a treatment center. And we pretty much know that nobody can steal forever without getting caught. And therefore, the police will probably get involved, which means the court system is going to have to address what activity took place and what the consequences are, which means that lawyers involved, which means if they are incarcerated, you're talking about reentry. And that's why all of these things are kind of, but we don't know for sure. You're right, you don't know. But when it happens, that's the last time you want to, that's not a good time, actually, for you to think, we need to know. Because we told you in this seminar, you already know that you need to know. And it's going to be those things that you don't know that are going to hurt you the most. So you're never going to be able to find out everything. But if you know by category, it's going to make it a lot easier. And if you know somebody in your community that knows even more than you know, then that's the same as you having access to it. And that's what you're doing. You're going out and finding people who know more than you do by their specific category. If you have a daughter and she has children and you're not going to be willing to take care of those children while she goes into rehab or incarceration or is an active user, and child enforcement has shown up and they said, we're taking them away from you if nobody else in the family will take care of these children, then if you already know that, you would be probably pretty smart to get to know these people before you need them. And that would make a world of difference, because what they're going to do, and we'll talk about this particular type of service in another episode, is they've got a very deliberate, direct way of doing this, and they don't change from it. You either play in that role and do what they say, or you'll find that it gets very, very difficult. That's the truth about a lot of these providers. They don't have the bandwidth to individualize your particular needs with their services a wraparound. They might say they do, and for the most part, some really give it a genuine attempt. But for what you're interested in is exactly what is their process, so you can understand it more clearly. You'll never be able to really do that until you get together with them. And that's why you're going to use your workbook. In your workbook, you're going to be able to take an evaluation card, and it's actually here, and you're going to write down by the columns the information that's needed for you to really thoroughly understand this particular organization and their services. And then we're going to start to take a look at how how you communicate with them. Once the service is ongoing, you will more than likely have questions. And hopefully when you did the Get Network, you asked the question, once we're on service with you, what's the best way to communicate with you? Because we don't want to kind of like run down here every time, we have a question. What would you suggest we do when we have a question? Who do we call, or what resources can explain these things best? Do you have videos on YouTube that we could take a look at about typical services that you recommend people view when they're going to be using those services? So with that in mind, they may have an ability for you to learn on your own too, is what we're suggesting. And then what you're going to do is you're going to create your own referral network inside the workbook. And so that gives you kind of the organization structure of the Get Networked. Before, you were finding that they were there, but now the there becomes real and you're finding out what it means to you. And that's the step that we're asking you to take here. So get your car keys, put some gas in the tank, turn on your cell phone, and go out and meet with these people and make a record of what it is that they told you. There's also something that you need to understand. There will be times when you're not going to be satisfied with the care or the correspondence or the way you were addressed or things like that. I would suggest that forgive this and just a willingness to accept that for the most part, everybody's trying to do the best that they can do. When things are egregiously wrong and you do want to speak up, what I would also suggest is do it in an effective manner, okay? Find out the facts of what happened. Find out the name and titles and even the phone numbers, if possible, of the people that were there and saw it happen. And then that way, when you make an issue known to a senior manager, you can not get people in trouble, but say, here's some people that I've spoken with that might be able to shed light on how they saw it. You're going to be kind of like contributing as an ombudsman on an issue, and not just somebody that's sitting there saying, hey, listen, we feel you messed up, you hurt us, we don't like it, and we're going to tell everybody that you're a bad group. That really doesn't help anyone. Certainly doesn't help the people that are in the service, because they're probably not going to make changes to it. But when you approach it in a way that they can kind of like maybe do their own little background, and you never know. They get into a board, a staff meeting, and somebody brings up, hey, we heard from this one family, and they were kind enough to share with us in a helpful way some of the things that they saw that we could improve on. And as a member of our staff, I just wanted to bring it up this morning. Maybe we can noodle on it and pass it around and see what we can do to make it better in the future. Well, now you've really contributed and you've effectively communicated. And you'll probably feel better about it than you did if you just hit them with anger and then felt to yourself, well, I got that off my chest. It's like, well, yeah, but you really didn't accomplish the things that I think you were trying to accomplish. So we're suggesting to you that, by formulating your concern, by doing some background check and including it to your correspondence, and then putting it in writing and sending it to the email, there's no problem with you getting in touch with the CEO, the medical director, or other people in senior role and key decision makers within that organization. We would suggest do it in a way that's constructive and helpful, and at the same time satisfying for you, which is most important, that you're contributing and you're making a difference, and hopefully things will get changed. This industry is still learning on how to do what it does. It didn't start out perfect. It's not perfect today. And when they say that they're willing to make changes, that's very possible that they are. But they need feedback. And so don't feel that your information is disregarded just on the fact that you're saying it. Likely it's not. Your effectiveness in saying it is very helpful to all of us, because it may be something that my child doesn't have to go through because you took the time to express in a constructive way your concerns. Once again, this can become an issue, and we would recommend that you determine an issue, develop a decision, and design a plan of action around this issue. The clarity that will be involved in that communication will be off the charts and very much appreciative when you use the 3 coping skills as part of your correspondence on an issue that you have a concern about. So go out and get networked. And when you're networking, be effective And when you get an answer you don't like, keep trying, because it's very possible you talk to 3 people and you get 3 different answers, but it's likely that there's a commonality which is more closer to the truth of what you're looking for in all 3. So look for that. And primary source information is always the best, but it's even stronger when you back it up with secondary source information, and never disregard your gut feeling, because there's certain things, at least the way I believe, that God and the Holy Spirit talks to us and helps us to make decisions. And if we close ourselves off to just, well, that's not what I saw in the primary information or the secondary information, but I just have this gut feeling, include it. It may be just as meaningful as the other 2. I want to thank you very much for taking the time to consider getting networked in advance and all that is involved in doing that. We hope that this was helpful. Hello, I want to thank you for continuing to view our episode. And we're now going to work into the area of the 3 Ds. This is an important characteristic for the family to develop skills in. And we'll start by taking the time to look at an issue and then determine the issues based on the area of determining a solution, developing a decision, and designing a plan of action. By using your Module 3 workbook and going to a specific issue, you'll be able to find that the first step in that 3D skill set is the FTR, the Family Transformational Model. And the Family Transformational Model is a set-up way, each time the same way, that we will take 5 categories to look at in determining a solution. And each category is going to have 3 questions. So let's get started. The first is to define the issue. Naturally, we'll want to know what the issue is. The word issue is really problem, but we're saying the word issue is, the reason we're saying the word issue is it's just a little bit easier to digest, because it's not always a problem. Sometimes it's just something that's happening, and we need to determine a solution to it. The next question is, how does the issue impact the family? We need to know that. We need to know, we have an issue, that's fine. The issues can exist, but if it's impacting the family, in what way is it impacting the family? And then what steps can the family take to prepare and then respond to the issue? That's very important for us to know. The fact is that this issue exists and it's impacting the family. We tend to believe maybe there was something we could have done to kind of get ready for it. And if there was, then we would want to have taken those steps, which is what all these episodes are about. And then who can help assist us and the family in our response? So we want to start to ask ourselves, we know that there's an issue, we know that it's impacting the family, and there are things that we could do to prepare for this, but we're probably going to need a resource, information, another person outside of our family, or maybe one of our family members specifically can use their functionality and contribute. So we want to identify that. And then what should the family expect as their outcome? And kind of a start with the end in mind thought, where we're saying, if we're going to do something, it's going to result in something. So is that result desirable? Is that really what we want? Because if we're going to create a solution, then we want the solution's outcome to be what we expect it would be. So in each of these categories that I just described, 1 through 5, there are 3 questions, and we're going to ask ourselves each of these. Let's go back into the first category, define the issue. Clearly state what happened or what will happen. We want to know very clearly what happened or what's likely to happen. And then write that down. Identify who's involved or who should be involved, and then what would you like to have happen or like to see happen. The third question in every category is going to be used. You'll see how in just a minute. But just remember, the third question in every category, so this question right here, the way you answer it, will be reused. Now the next question is, how is the issue impacting the family? Who in the family exactly is impacted? In what way are they impacted? And then the third question is, what is needed to move forward? And then the third category is, what steps can the family take to prepare and then respond to the issue? The 3 questions again. What needs to be done? And then prioritize that list. Who needs to be involved? And then what will it look like, the third question, what will it look like when completed? Then the 4th category is, who can help and assist the family in their response? The 3 questions are, how to search and organize this organization to help you. In other words, it's not enough that you know you're going to go and introduce yourselves to a treatment center in your community. You want to start to determine, how do I look for them and organize my way of seeking help, because it might not just be that group alone. You may also need other services to kind of start to create a who can assist us. And it may be many different types of people. What to ask from them, and then what to expect. Remember the third question, what to expect. And then the 5th category is, what should the family expect as their outcome? Well, that has to do a lot with timing. And if it takes a certain amount of time, let's be realistic of what that is. That has something to do with the expense of the involvement, of getting involved in this issue. And then the third question being, required changes, our changes as family members, for this response to successfully take place. Now, let's state what our solution is. Hey, this is the great news. You've already developed your solution. By answering each of these 3 questions, the third question in every category, you'll pull forward now into your statement. So your first sentence of your statement is the third answer in the first category. What would you like to have happen or like to see happen? Well, that becomes your first sentence. So what your first sentence for your solution statement is, what we would like to see happen is, and you just pull your answer from there to here. Do the same thing with the second category. How does the issue impact the family? Using the third question's answer, what is needed for the family to move forward? So now your second sentence is, what's needed to move forward is. And now you're accumulating these answers from these categories, the third question, and it's actually becoming your first sentence, your second sentence, your third sentence, your fourth sentence, and your 5th sentence in your solution statement. So your solution statement is going to sound something like, what we would like to see happen is, and what's needed to move forward will be, and then the third question from the third category, what it will look like when completed will be, and then what we expect will be, and then what's required for us to have a successful response is. Now those are your 5 sentences. You've just constructed your solution. And this is how you go about using a model for creating a solution. For any issue in life you have to face, you can use this as a way of approaching it. Now let's go to the other area, which is the second coping skill, making a decision. let's make a value-based decision. Let's make a decision each time that kind of balances with what we value most. So first we want to determine what are our values. Well, the best way to do that is to write down on a piece of paper what types of things do you as an individual value most. And each member of your family can do this in a kind of a group exercise. And then once you've done that, I value love, I value honesty, I value relationships and sharing. These could all be an individual's 1, 2, 3. Then prioritize them. Which of the 1, 2, 3 is most important? Then have each member of the family do the same thing. And then you can sit there and say to the family, what was your number 1? What was your number 2? What was your number 1? What was your number 1? What was your number 1? And then what was your 2? What was your 2? What was your 3? What was your 3? And where you start to see many people in the family say, well, my number 1 is relationships, my number 2 was trust, and my number 3 was love. Well, then you talk to another person, they say, well, my number 1 was love, my number 2 was personal expression or confidentiality, or so they mentioned something different, but they did mention love. And then the third member of the family happens to mention love also. You know now that love is a value of the family. So whatever decisions you make, you want to balance it on the fact of, does this disrupt our values? If it does, at least you know that it does, and to what degree. You're calculating that. But at least also you're including, what do we value most? Let's make sure our decisions don't counter that. And now, in the first step, we're going to identify exactly what's happened. And this is, by the way, in your book, okay? And it is for each of the episodes. Now, identify exactly what's happened, what happened, how did it happen, who did it happen to. Then the second step is analyze the situation, assess the problem, identify the problem, and in what areas did the problem create an impact. You're writing all of these down. The third step of that the third step in the decision-making model is, what is the number of one contributing factor? What is causing this issue to take place? You need to know that before you make a decision. The fourth step is, now that you know the number one factor, you need to go out and find out what information there is about this. Your primary source, you're going to go to the actual person or organization that's involved with this and ask them, what is this issue, and help us to understand it better. The secondary source would be, somebody's telling you this happened, or somebody suggests that you should do something a certain way, and it's coming from somebody else other than the primary source. It could be an article, a clinical paper. These are all secondary sources, and you gather them and you make them part of your primary, secondary information gathering. The third area that you look at is your gut. What does your gut, because that's often where our faith comes in, and other things that are very important when making decisions get included. So trust your gut is what we're saying in the decision-making process. The fifth step in making a good quality decision is where you're taking a criteria and saying, let's take what we're going to make a decision about and let's balance it on the criteria to make sure that we're covering all of our bases. And this will ensure safety of your loved one. Is safety a part of what's being considered? And do we have the resources that are needed to do the decision we're looking at? And then, do we understand the timetable? Is it realistic? And do we understand the negative impacts? Because every decision has a positive and negative. Well, identify what the negative outcomes might be so that you can weight the factor of, is this a good decision? And then, would you do this would you ask others to do this if they were doing it for you? Meaning it was done for you or to you. Is this still a good decision? These are all areas that you want to take a look at. The third coping skill is in the area of the family plan of action. And everybody could say, well, Roy, listen, we're just going to go out and do it. Well, it's going to get done a lot more effectively. I want to warn you that the addiction industry is not organized. And then again, either is the family. So you're taking two disorganized organizations and you're putting them together. So a plan is a very good idea. The other factor is, you're going to more than likely require the assistance of a lot of different groups. And as time goes by, those groups are going to change. And now it's a whole new set of groups that you're dealing with. When you're at the hospital, the ER, that's what that is. Then you move over to detox, that's what that is. Then you move over to therapy and treatment, and that lasts for 16 weeks. That's what that is. Then you're looking at sober living, recovery, maybe incarceration, and then reentry, on all that's involved in that. So there's all sorts of reasons why a plan put on paper based on the decision and the information gathering that you've made, based on the solution that you know you want to use, are very good ideas. It all comes together with the plan of action. Then you take the plan of action and you go find a professional to help you. Everything that we've done up to now is to position you to a place where you can be properly assisted and directed and supported. This is what's often missing in the families. This is what exhausts the families. This is where the families get into fights internally on. So, for that reason, we're going to apply the 3D coping skills. Determine a solution. We're going to develop a decision, and we're going to design a plan of action. And we're going to do it each time. I hope this is helpful for you. I'm confident it will be.